My name is Lina Kushch. I'm a journalist, media expert, and media trainer with more than 25 years of experience, including contributing to Reuters and BBC and working as a head of the regional correspondence office in all Ukrainian newspaper. As a first secretary of National Union of Journalists of Ukraine, I coordinate the work of 24 regional offices with more than 18,000 members. I walked up to a loud siren outside the window, and I had the documents and necessary things to be prepared, but I didn't put them into the backpack. The war came as a surprise to all Ukrainians, I think. No one planned for the future with the knowledge that military conflict forced us to leave our homes. And at the first day of invasion, we called our colleague to understand the situation and decide how to proceed. And that day, our office was open until 8 p.m. And that was the last day we could work there. Now we are in the different cities of Western Ukraine. I am in Chernivtsi now, for example, and we coordinate the assistance to journalists. We must maintain our ability to help journalists because we are National Union of Journalists of Ukraine. So it's important to be as close to journalists as we can. Many of our colleagues continue to do their job, even in dangerous circumstances, in dangerous conditions. And as to the evacuation, only 1 of 5 evacuated journalists crossed the border. So most of media workers are still in Ukraine. That's why I'm here. We have many problems for journalists this month. The first needs were in means of protection and first aid kits. We focus on the needs of regional journalists who had never been experienced in the war zone before. The second problem is the evacuation. We cannot imagine its scale. It's huge scale of journalists needs to be evacuated. We estimate that between 3,000 up to 5,000 journalists will need to be evacuated from 10 regions with combat zones. We are looking for transport, for accommodation, or for help with going abroad. And problem number 3 is an escalating campaign of kidnapping and intimidation in the territories controlled by Russian troops. So I am in contact with many journalists, and I and my colleagues from Union of Journalists are preparing and writing stories on our website about the experience of media working in this war. This wasn't the first time I've had to leave my home as a result of Russian invasion. I was born, lived and worked in Donetsk in eastern Ukraine until 2014. After the starting of hybrid war by Russia against Ukraine in 2014, and after the occupation of my city, I had to left home and move to Kyiv. It was dangerous for me as for Ukrainian journalists to live in Donetsk. And the first thing I had bought after arriving in Kiev, my family have bought after arriving in Kiev, was the air mattress and the pump, because we need the places for sleeping in a rent apartment. And the first thing we bought after moving from Kiev 1 month ago was air mattresses and the pump, because we need the places for sleeping too. And the second thing was the blackout curtain. We bought the blackout curtain because during the curfew, the windows must be darkened. I installed a special application on my smartphone to get the signal of air raids. We are working in 3 different places in Western Ukraine and coordinate our work. We are working by distance. I talk to journalists who are in the war zone, those who live live these surrounding cities, and who was getting injured. People say what they saw. I am engaged last 2 weeks in the evacuation of journalists from dangerous places like Mariupol, and our colleagues say how they sit for 3 or spent 3 or 2 weeks without light, water, without communication, without food or medicine. We are talking to experienced reporters, so it's important for us to share this experience, because many of regional journalists haven't this experience before, and we try to help to journalists. We get the safety equipment from our foreign partners. We get the first aid kits from them, or we get the equipment for technical help for journalists who moved into the other region of Ukraine, like computers, power banks, phones, or cameras for work. And so I prepare all these things for our colleagues. For them, it's important to continue their work for their audience. At least 12 journalists were killed and 10 were injured during this war. It's difficult to verify many cases because we can get to the combat zones, or we can get to the territories controlled by Russia troops now, but we try to verify those cases. We monitor the situation in those zones. As to regional, or as to Ukrainian media, we can see that all Ukrainian news channel and TV and radio broadcasting channels are united and hold the united broadcast during this month. They use different platforms and different sources from all national TV channels to have this 24 hours marathon during this month. As to regional media, it depends from which region they are disseminated. Let me think. We can see that an increase of demand of quality work of journalists this month. The audience need verified and checked information from trusted media. However, journalists are in difficult position now because all financial model, all economic model of independence media were destroyed. No incomes from advertisement, no incomes from, for example, subscribing, no incomes from the other sources. And it's a challenge for independent of media in Ukraine, because many colleagues are working without salary this month as a volunteer. It was their volunteer job, and we can see the problem with printing media because of combat zones, and it's impossible to print media in combat zones, including Kyiv, or it's impossible to deliver the printed media in those zones. So the second maybe threat is the closure or stop producing many local media, including broadcasting media or print media or online media as well. And the next challenge is the inability of journalists to find work abroad or to find work in a new place, because, for example, the amount of journalists in Western Ukraine can increase into 5 times or 6 times, but it's not enough places, workplaces for journalists, and as to journalists who went abroad, they went without any foreign language, and so they need to know any foreign language for getting the job. We get many questions from journalists because they are confused. What can they, what kind of information they can share, or what kind of information they cannot share. We think and we understand that during the wartime, the some freedoms or some rights can be limited, including freedom of speech. I agree, but if it gets about the any rules, we need those rules, like the rules from Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Defense, and we'd like to see the any rules for journalists, and we'd like to see that all people, for example, police or any military person or police or the other representatives can follow these rules, and these rules are, and this job is clear for all journalists. We are against, we are not support the different standard, for example, for foreign journalists or for Ukrainian journalists, or for all national journalists, or for local media journalists. So the rules should be clear for, and should be one rule for all journalists. We can different cases when Ukrainian journalists were treated by were online treated, or get any messages from with it was in like online attacks by messages or by phone calls for Ukrainian journalists. Including me, I get a message when I was proposed to change my views and to support the pro-Russia troops. Yeah. Because they as they promised to do something with me and my family. I get the message, and some journalists get the phone calls from unknown people and with threats, and some journalists on the territories controlled by Russia troops, for example in Verdansk, they get the face-to-face threats because they was demanded from the editorial office to change their editorial politic and support Russia on their site and such other. And we have at least 7 or 8 cases with illegal arrested of journalists on the occupied territories, or with arresting their relatives, close relatives. So it's the big thing we are dealing. We try to deal with. So as to other dangerous, as to digital dangerous, as to digital safety of journalists, we can see the that many websites of Ukrainian media were attacked by Russia hackers, I think, because many sites of Ukrainian media are not have not the good and the high level of cyber security. As usual, journalists have their website or have their sources like social media pages or like email sources on such other. We didn't think about the high level cyber security before. So it was the problem with attack, with cyber attacks again Ukrainian media sites. I agree, it's important in this war. I left my home with my backpack and with my computer only, that's all. I have minimum things for me, and I use the any things of my hosted family here. It's maybe I have some barrier to buy new thing now. For example, I can't buy a new cap, for example, for tea, because I remember that I have 1 or 2 in my home. Why should I buy a cap? Because because I have one. As usual, opinion polls that Ukrainians, the majority of Ukrainians, hope for speedy resolution of the situation up to 3 months. Maybe I am in this majority, and therefore playing is quite limited to a close horizon. We trying to save our job and by switching to remote work, by taking into account my experience during COVID-19 pandemic, I prefer to stay temporarily here, and I hope for speedy resolution of the situation. As you know, for female journalists, we have the situation when female journalists can choose to live in Ukraine or to go abroad, because men are staying in Ukraine and they can go abroad. So I can see that many female journalists prefer to go abroad, and I try to support them. They go abroad and try to find new places for living. However, I see that when they go abroad, they can't find any new job as a journalist as usual, because they can't use the foreign language, and they can they haven't any skills as well. So as to female journalists in Ukraine, I see that many colleagues left in the dangerous places, in the dangerous cities, because they have relatives need to carry out. Yes, as usual, this is work for female. Yeah, this is work for women. And they cannot left their cities or their home because of they need to care of relatives or care for pets, for many pets, for example, dogs and cats. I talked to my colleagues and asked them to move from dangerous places, but I was told that they are not planning this. I'd like to help journalists in Ukraine to continue their work for their audience. Journalists are important today than even before. And as a first secretary of National Union of Journalists of Ukraine, I always cared about the female journalists, especially in the issues with safety of journalists, in the issues of online attacks against journalists, and in the issues of any labor rights of journalists as well. We try to do our best for objective reporting. I think that we can be sidelined because we are inside this war, but we should verify the information and be honest with our audience, and so we can be objective.